women, I'm going to start with you because it just feels right. What did you make of the case, just as a starting point in terms of Sarah Everard? And for those who don't know, wasn't on a night out, woman, for all intents and purposes, just traveling home, attacked, killed by a police officer. Ladies, what were your thoughts when you heard about it?
I'm happy to step in. So I felt like this was very close to home for me. I actually live in Tooting, so it's just next door to Clapham. So an area I'm really familiar with. It's an area that I often, move freely around. So I think, first of all, it was just kind of, it just felt very personal, even though you didn't know Sarah personally. And I think there was, a lot of empathy there for the situation. I myself live alone, walk home alone, and it's just something that we should all just naturally be able to do and feel comfortable doing. I think the topic that has come out of this is, the focus around the behaviours that women have when they are alone and the things that they feel they need to do that they don't actually talk about. Things like calling a friend or, holding your keys in your hand, things like that. They're all things I think women have been doing for such a long time, but it's just not been talked about because, unfortunately, it's taken an event like this to bring the subject, to light. So, yeah, obviously the situation's devastating. It's awful what's happened, but one positive is that we can talk about this, and hopefully people who are unaware of the actions or the extents that women go to can become aware and kind of see what it's like to be in the shoes of a woman or just anybody who's walking around alone, vulnerable.
Yeah, nice. ZaZa, Mai, any response to that?
I completely agree. I think for me, what is so shocking about the case is that it's a police officer, like somebody who's supposed to be upholding the law, protecting women. And from the little that I've read, it's like Sarah did everything that we're supposed to do. She told her friend where she's going. She's wearing bright clothing. She's in shoes that she's able to get around easily in. And still, she was a victim of something really horrendous. And like you said, Emma, it's all these things that women talk about that men maybe don't consider, like having to cross the road when you might see a group of guys, even though they're probably not up to anything at all, but it's just having that in your mindset that I'm vulnerable. And I'm glad that people are talking about it, but it's a shame that it's at the expense of not even just Sarah, but so many women's lives being lost in this way.
Yeah, Mai?
Yeah, I don't know the case actually. I tried to understand something. Can you give me a summary on what has happened to the Sarah girl?
Yeah, that was unpacking. I think the folks have touched on it essentially. So, female victim murdered by a police officer. I guess it's kind of like what Emma said there. On the one hand, it's a isolated incident, but I think what's happening is it points to a much broader and wider issue in terms of women's safety. Yeah, and like the ladies were saying just there, it's a discussion
all over
that hasn't really happened.
Okay.
Yeah, it's become quite broad.
Where has this happened actually? In London or in UK or
South London?
Yeah.
South London.
I just have something to add. My dad was just telling me that he has not been convicted yet. So he was like, okay, just...
that's what I wanted to know.
Keep the facts. Yeah, so my apologies. He's not
allegedly did what he did.
That's it.
Yeah. Probably conviction pending, but...
yeah, no, let's be honest.
So.
Yeah.
LJ, I don't know if you wanted to come in from there. What's been your take?
No, I feel like everyone's right in their own point. I think the reason why it struck a chord so much is for years we've kind of been culturally taught these rules to kind of skirt by not having a conversation about these issues. And I think all these rules are built up. In this case, the lady did absolutely everything she's meant to according to these rules, and yet she was still taken advantage of by someone who should be really in the position of power. He's given that position of power, and we're meant to trust him. I mean, come on, who in a park at night is not going to accept the help of a police officer who shows you his badge? Like, there is no way that she could have escaped this, and I think that's why people have kind of taken such attention to it. I think it's getting stirred in with an awful lot of other topics. It really doesn't deserve to be, because it is such an important issue. But I think these other topics that are being dragged in, again, are doing what these previous cultural rules did and murkying it so much so that we don't talk about it properly, and so nothing gets solved. It just seems like a cycle to me.
Yeah. And Kane?
Yeah. This is something that I've spoke to quite a few people around, like, about it. And I think it is an isolated incident in the case of this was a policeman and there was no escaping it, unfortunately. And so it's horrible, it's gruesome. And I'm happy that the conversations that have come from that are happening. But what I've been talking to a lot of people about is because I've been seeing online that people have been saying that men need to be educated. And I very much agree with that, because, okay, with Sarah, it was a sicko, and whatever you could teach this man as much as you want, how he potentially worked was not going to change, because the kind of person to do something like that is not the everyday man that I imagine we see. But the conversations that have come from that about, okay, what LJ said about she was doing everything right, what I've learned, and I think is horrible, is this everything right that women have to do. Like, women shouldn't have to listen to their music quietly. They shouldn't have to walk with their keys in their hand. They shouldn't be scared about crossing the road and all these different things. And that's because men don't realise how opposing they can be to women. And that's the kind of education that I think is really important, because it's a responsibility as men that I feel like we need to learn. Okay, these things that, for example, if I'm walking down the street and I'm walking behind a woman, my education now says to me, no, okay, don't walk behind her, walk ahead of her so that she feels safer. And yeah, it's a horrible world that we have to do that, but me walking ahead of her isn't hard for me. Me walking behind her isn't hard for me, but how she feels would change dramatically. And I think that's kind of the education that I would like to come as a whole to men, is there's loads of different situations that need to change and only men can do them, because unfortunately there's an ignorance from men still, where if a woman's talking about this, men are going to throw their hands in the air and go, yeah, but it's not all of us, and yeah, it's not that deep. Well, it is that deep. How these women
my
feel
response to
is
the
horrible.
education thing, though, is who does the educating? Where does that come in? Is it at home, or is it at school, or is it something new?
Everywhere. The education, whenever you think about things that you get taught, and they're coming from all directions. Something that really struck a chord with me, and I instantly got it. I thought about like this kind of behavior where you don't get it because you're a different walk of life, but then you're taught it from all sides and you realize is racism. Because when I see racism and I think, all right, okay, you're not going to understand how that person feels because you're not that person, but you're taught in so many different areas of life that behavior is incorrect. I think the education for men needs to come from that way, because at first I was kind of ignorant and I was like, okay, so women should teach this. And then I was like, no, because just because women say it, but men should teach it. I know now when I have my son, I will say to him, look, do this, do this, do this. I imagine his mother will say the same thing. Think about in schools, right? In schools, your women are taught to, like, in my school anyway, a lot of the girls in my school were took to one side. There was like an assembly about it, and it was like, okay, so carry a rape alarm, don't drink too much this, all this kind of stuff. And men never get that. Okay, consent. I think the biggest thing is consent isn't really, there's no education on consent. We all think it's obvious, but so many women say, oh, there's so many times I've been assaulted, and men don't even realize it. And that says to me, there's an obvious consent issue here where men don't realize what they should be getting before they propose that. Exactly. So that's what I took from that. That's what I've took from that anyway.